Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. This is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Thank you to everyone who continues to share and subscribe and rate and review and do all those social media things. We appreciate you all so much. Today, I am very excited to introduce to you my longtime friend. Can I call you a friend, Caitlin?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. We've at least known each other for a good long while now. I'm thinking like close to 15 years, right?
I think it might even be a little longer than that, yeah.
Longer than that. Wow, it's been a good while. So professionally, you are the director of fraternity and sorority life at University of Oregon.
Correct, yes.
How long you been there now?
I've been here about 4.5 years, but I did do a short stint here back in 2004, 2005, which is probably around when I met you.
That sounds about right. So, and I guess we should say today you're not specifically a healthcare practitioner. You're kind of more like me. You're a patient.
Yes. Yes.
So we're going to get into some things today. I guess I should tell people that some of the things that we talk about today might be a bit triggering for people, might be very triggering for people depending on your history. And so if you have a history with domestic violence, please listen with caution. And we can get into some of those things in a couple of minutes, but could you just take me back to who was Caitlin as a kid growing up?
Oh my gosh. I was pretty free-spirited, and I was really lucky because I'm an only child. So I got to do all the fun stuff I wanted to do. And I, like most little girls, loved horses, and so I was able to have horses, and that was my life then. I rode my horses every day and spend all my free time at the barn. I, of course, was involved in things like Girl Scouts and all of that kind of fun stuff. But I have to say I was a pretty lucky kid. I got to do a lot of really fun stuff. And the bonus to not having siblings is when we went on family vacations, I got to take a friend instead of a brother or sister.
Nice.
Can't complain.
And you grew up in Southern California, right?
I did, yeah. I grew up in Orange County and lived there up until about 6 years ago.
Up until about 6 years ago. Wow. Yeah. And so you and I met because before I worked in healthcare, I spoke almost exclusively in the education market, and I did a lot of work with fraternities and sororities around the country at colleges and universities. Mm-hmm. And you and I are both old fraternity boys and sorority girls now. And so where did you go to college, and how did you get involved in this idea of fraternity and sorority life?
I did my undergrad at Cal State San Bernardino, which was at the time a pretty small state institution, only about 11,000 students. And so we were a very close-knit community. From the time I was a teenager, I knew I wanted to be a marriage and family therapist. That was my goal. So when I graduated, I went on to grad school and started work on a master's in clinical psychology at Pepperdine University. And along the way, I had a couple opportunities to work with higher ed. I worked at a community college for a little bit, and then my best friend, Jameson Keller, who I think you know as well, he went on to become a fraternity and sorority advisor, and I started helping him out with some stuff, and I thought, wow, I really like doing this. And so I finished my master's in clinical psych, but decided that I wanted to go the higher ed route instead. And I started actually working with alumni relations at Chapman University, and volunteering my time to work with fraternities and sororities, and then it just evolved into what it is now, which is all fraternities and sororities all the time.
Yes, I understand this, and I guess you and I being on the quote unquote inside, being members of fraternities and sororities, and then now you working professionally. What do you think that the general public gets wrong about traditionally Greek lettered organizations?
Well, it isn't all about the social life. It isn't all about partying. I think when done right, fraternities and sororities are about making people better people, developing excellent leaders, and giving undergraduate students the opportunity to go out and really become productive citizens once they graduate. Um, I don't think that there's a better platform for leadership development on a college campus other than a fraternity and sorority.
Agreed. I agree with you completely, and I always thought it was kind of short sighted to hear people talk smack
Yeah,
on fraternities and sororities when it's like, wow, this is truly leadership lessons and leadership experience that
right.
would be hard to find somewhere else.
Yeah, I always laugh when people ask if I party with the students because it's like, yeah, I get paid by the state of Oregon to party with students. No, it isn't quite how that works, but
Right, right. And so I guess we should explain though that your role now as a full-fledged adult career professional
yeah.
is working on the college campus, making sure like what is a typical day, what is involved whenever you're doing your advisement.
I always say there's no typical day because anything can happen in a day. The best laid plans. um, but we primarily work on educational programming for the organizations. We do leadership development with our leaders within the organizations. They also have oversight councils that they all work with, and so we work with the leaders on those councils. We assist in conduct cases when those arise, but mostly we're trying to prevent those from happening. So we do a lot of health and wellness, risk management, education, things like that.
Excellent,
Okay.
excellent, and having you hired me as a professional, and it
Mm-hmm.
was wonderful to work with your students, and I always love that opportunity. It always feels a little bit like a homecoming whenever I go work with fraternities and sororities
Yeah,
on college campuses. Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah, they're fun.
yeah. Yeah, it is. It's fun, and there's like you said, there's always an adventure going on there.
Yes, there is.
So take me back a little bit. Well, let me share this with you. Whenever I have my pre meds every semester at Notre Dame, the first writing assignment that I give them is to write about. It's based on my experience and having Jennifer hold my hand in the emergency room, saying I'm here. And so I asked them to, their first assignment is to write a 2-page paper on a time that someone has been there for them or a time that they have been there for someone else. And in our discussions, I had a pretty good idea of the story that you were going to share. Are you comfortable going into some of that now?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay, so let's go back. You're working on a college campus,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got life is going well, right?
Right.
You've got a long-term boyfriend. You've got a baby son at this point,
He was
and
six.
then
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Oh, 6 years old. Okay, and then things changed
Yeah.
abruptly. Can you take us back to that?
Sure. So my partner and I had been together about 7.5 years, and it was not a great relationship. But there had never been any physical abuse, and I think in my mind I justified the the things that happened, the toxicity, as being okay because he never hurt me, he never hit me or anything like that. Um, and it finally came to the point where the relationship needed to end, and he was still sleeping on the couch in my house because he hadn't found an apartment yet, but it was over for all intents and purposes. Um, and it was right before Christmas. He took my son to the movies, and they came home kind of late at night. And my son came up and got in bed with me. I never saw Chris, my ex partner. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, my bedroom door opened rather loudly. You can open a door quietly and not disturb anyone, but it was obvious that disrupting my sleep was the intent. And so I woke up and asked what was going on. He said nothing, and then grabbed my phone and walked out of the room. And I looked at my tablet to see what time it was, and noticed that it was 3:09 in the morning, and he had texted me several times prior to coming into my room, and that he wanted to talk. And so I thought, well, what the hell? I'm up now. I may as well go see what's going on. So I made sure my son was still asleep and tucked in, and went downstairs. And as I got down there, he asked me when I was going to tell him about all these guys I was dating, and I laughed because that was not happening. And he said, "Well, what about all these pictures?" And it's a long story, but my friend and I had been joking back and forth and sending funny pictures to each other, and he assumed that I was involved with other people, and so I said, I did. I laughed, and he said, "Are you laughing? Why are you laughing?" Called me some names, then said, "F you, F you." And so I told him to get out of my house, and I asked for my phone. I wanted him to give him my phone back, and he reached over onto the couch. There was a pillow laying there, so I assumed he was grabbing my phone. And the next thing I knew, he was on top of me, and he was stabbing me. He had retrieved a knife from the couch. He's a very large guy, 6'5". He's about 280 pounds at the time. So he definitely had me pinned down. I yelled. Fortunately for me, my mom lives in my house, and so I said, "Mom, he's stabbing me. He's killing me." And so she very quietly got into my room with my son, and blocked the door and called 911. And he ended up stabbing me 19 times, all in my arms, head, neck, chin. I tucked my chin, so most of my wounds are out here, but because he was going for my throat. I have a couple on my chest. I have a defensive wound on my hand, where I tried to grab the knife, which I know was stupid, but when you're in that situation,
instinct.
Yeah, you do.
Instinct, yeah.
You do whatever you can, and so I remember saying to him, "Do you really want your son to not have a dad?" And he said, "I want my son to not have parents." And so at that point, I knew that his intent was to kill me. And for some reason, I thought if I had my back to him, I'd be safer. So I kind of rolled onto my stomach, and this is where it gets a little graphic. And he actually stabbed me in the back of the neck, and it came out through my throat, and I could see the end of the blade sticking out of my throat. And so at that point, I said, "I'm dead. I'm dead." And he must have believed me, because he took the knife and walked it into the kitchen, left it in the kitchen sink, and then I rolled onto the floor, and played dead, and he walked out of the house. And the police found him sitting on the curb, waiting. So he was arrested. And then I laid there.
And you
Yeah.
are laying there.
Mm-hmm. I remember I remember the smell of the blood. I remember thinking, I can't believe I'm dying. I can't die. I have to stay alive for my son. And the strangest things went through my head. I remember thinking, oh my God, nobody has the passwords to my bank account. How are they going to get my money to take care of my kid? And things like that. And I didn't have a moment where like my life flashed before my eyes or anything like that. But I definitely just thought, I can't die. I can't die. And hurry up. I knew, I didn't know that my mom had called 911, but I knew kind of in my gut help was on the way. And sure enough, they actually got to my house in about 3 minutes. And finding out where they came from in town, they were moving at a pretty good clip to get there. And so the first officers came in the house and said, "Who did this to you?" And I said, "Christopher Hampton." And they said, "Okay, we got him." And they went through and searched the house. At that point, they thought there could have been an accomplice. And then the next officers who came in came to me. It was Officer Osborne and Sergeant Stotts. And Shane Osborne is a Marine vet, and he had combat gauze on him. And so he immediately applied the combat gauze to the wound in my neck that was gushing blood. I remember hearing Sergeant Stotts say, "That's the worst one I've ever seen." And thinking, don't say that. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. Wow.
But Officer Osborne saved my life by having that gauze there and being able to get the bleeding stopped. I remember when the paramedics got there, they put me on kind of a tarp and carried me out of my house. It was raining. I live in Oregon. It always rains. But I remember feeling the rain on my face. And when they first got there, I remember saying, "Please don't let me die." And Shane told me, "I'm not going to let that happen." Now, he and I are friends, and we've talked, and he said, I thought you were dead. I really did. And the first officer who came in, when he first saw me, he was sure I was dead. And when I moved, it kind of startled him. They put me in the paramedics. They asked, or in the ambulance, they asked for extra personnel to ride in the ambulance with me, because they didn't want just one person back there. So they had somebody else had to drive the ambulance, I guess, and took me to the hospital. And I remember, I think it was just my fight to stay conscious, but I remember trying to pay attention to the turns that the ambulance took, so I knew where we were. So I knew when we got on the freeway, and they turned the sirens on, and when we pulled up to the hospital, it was like, I felt like they just took me straight out of the ambulance into the trauma room. And in there, it was like I opened my eyes. I hadn't had my eyes open. And there were people everywhere. The doctor was at my feet, and he was introducing himself. And then I looked to my left, and there was this man standing there, and he said, "Hi, I'm Andy, and I'm your nurse. And I'll take care of you." And I held up my left hand, and he said, "Do you want me to hold your hand?" And I said, "Yes." And so he did. And I remember saying to him, "Please don't let me die." And he's like, "That's what we're here for. We're going to keep you going." And I had a necklace on. It's actually, I have it on today. It's a simple diamond pendant, and it was my mom's wedding ring. And I remember him saying, "Can I take your necklace off?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then they were just telling me they were going to have to cut my pajamas off, and I was like, "Oh, I really liked those pajamas, but oh well, do what you got to do." And then they then I don't remember much because they got the good drugs going. But I did go in for surgery immediately. I received 4 units of blood and 4 units of plasma. They stitched and stapled everything that they could, but identified a blood clot in the wound in my neck. And they had to call in a hand specialist for my hand. So they were bringing me out of the first surgery, and I crashed, so they had to take me back in. And then they brought me out. I was in ICU for 2.5 days. And that all happened on a Friday. So Friday I had 2 surgeries. So first one in the morning, the second one on my hand in the afternoon. And then Sunday morning they did surgery on my neck for the blood clot. And then I was in the hospital for 6 days, went home the day after Christmas. I spent Christmas Eve in an MRI machine, and I spent Christmas Day drinking that lovely fluid so that they could take x-rays and see if I could swallow, see if there was any damage to my esophagus. But I'm here. I'm still here. And I do have, permanent damage, and it'll always be there, but it's part of who I am now. So
yeah, and you're alive.
Yeah, exactly.
You're alive.
Exactly.
Boy, I have so many questions, and of course, if anything that I ask is too personal or anything, my heart is right now, right?
Yeah.
Hearing this, and I'm feeling as much as I can know what that's like to be so scared that you're going to die. Been there, done that.
Exactly.
I'm so curious though. Your mom and your son are upstairs.
Yeah.
Did they see you on the floor or on the couch?
No. My son heard me scream, and he actually ran out and he heard his dad yell, "Shut up, bitch," to me. And then he ran back into my room, and my mom was right behind him. She could see that he was going into shock because he started shaking, and so she got him under a blanket and just told him to stay real quiet and stay under the blanket. It was inevitable that he heard the 911 call, but she was trying to block him from that as much as she could. But yeah, and then once Chris left, it got quiet, and my mom said that's where she really got scared, because she had heard me, she had heard him, and then it was quiet, and I tried to yell. Actually, I remember laying on the floor yelling for my mom, but I just didn't have the strength to be loud enough where she could hear me. So that's when she was really, and she said to the 911 operator, who also is a dear friend now, she said, I can't hear her. She's quiet. And that's what she said. The 911 operator, Kayla, said, they're here. They've got him. So my mom knew that help was here.
So wow. I know we're supposed to talk about compassion and healthcare, but I'm so drawn to bringing up the question that I've also had to wrestle a lot with, which is what do you feel about someone who nearly ended your life? Mm-hmm. How do you get past that point and that knowledge that this is where I feel like our paths kind of diverge, because the person who hurt me, that wasn't intentional. He didn't go out that night trying to hurt me or blind me or hurt my friends. But your ex purposefully put a knife under the pillow on the couch with full intent to use that.
Yeah.
That's such a huge difference. How have you, I guess, this might be something you deal with obviously the rest of your life. How have you danced with that topic of the other person?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because it's been hard, and I remember a friend asking me, like, how are you doing with the end of your relationship? Because that part was part of it too. Even it wasn't a typical breakup, but that still happened. And lots of therapy. I have an amazing therapist who saw me every week for over a year, and I still see her monthly now. And she's just incredible and has really helped me just say everything I needed to say. I've written letters to him, never send them, but it just helps me get that emotion out. Sharing my story has been really, really healing for me, and being able to say, I'm here. And my therapist and I talked about that, and she said, I think the reason you're still here is so that you can speak for the people who can't speak for themselves anymore. And I've really taken that to heart. I know that my ex suffered from mental health issues. I'm certainly not going to put the responsibility on the mental health because he made the decision that he made. But I think he just wasn't in his right mind that night. I would actually love the opportunity to talk to him and hear what he says. When he was first interviewed by the police, he claimed that he didn't remember much. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think he does remember. I think the absolute hardest part was the first 8 to 9 months of every night going to bed with my son and him crying because he missed his dad. And I think
such complicated emotions there, right?
Exactly. And I hate him for what he's done to our son. But I can't hold on to hate in my heart because it just will destroy me. And that's just not the kind of person I am. So, it's like now almost 2.5 years out, I feel like he's someone I don't even know. And I had that, realization, kind of an epiphany of like, I don't even know who that guy is anymore. I can't even visualize him in my life. And he has a 12.5-year sentence, so he'll be 2031 is the earliest that he can get out. And by then things will be so different. Life will be so different for us. My son will be almost 18, and I think we'll just be in such a different place that he won't be part of our life at all. And it's just kind of it took time, but that's where we're at now.
Wow. The ability to not hold on to hate, it's hard.
It is.
It's hard, right? Mm-hmm. And it's I obviously you can dance around with the idea of forgiveness and what actually is forgiveness. It's something that I've like I said, I've wrestled with for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be able to have the levels of forgiveness that I do had the person who hurt me intentionally done so. And but like you said, we can't hold on to it, or else it just hurts us more.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
And that's a difficult road to walk sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And it's been, I mean, I certainly have had my moments. Um, the the night before he was sentenced, because of COVID, everything had to be done virtually, and I really wanted to sit across from him in a courtroom. I just really wanted him to see me alive. But instead, we had to do it over a screen. But I had written a victim impact statement, and I went and parked my car outside the jail, which is not far from my house. It's in the middle of our city, the county jail, and I read my victim impact statement um, in my car all by myself. But I screamed at him, I yelled at him, I cried, and that really helped me. And I think it helped because then when I had to read the statement in court, I'd gotten those really big emotions out, so I could read it and not scream at him and not um, cry cry to the point where no one would understand me, and that was important. I wanted people to hear what I said, what I had to say. I wanted him to hear what I had to say, um, and my favorite line from that was, "You seriously underestimated me," because he thought he could kill me and he couldn't.
You seriously underestimated
Mm-hmm.
me. Wow. That's kind of a good mantra for life right
Yeah,
there. You seriously
exactly.
underestimated me.
Right?
I like that. Can you take me back a little bit to you shared the story of your nurse Andy
Mm-hmm.
and the two compassionate acts that he did for you in the ER of holding your hand, and then also I guess whenever he asked about your necklace, um, medically that's got to come off,
Right,
right?
right.
Right, medically that's got to come off so we can work on your neck.
Yeah.
But he understanding that that was a valuable item to you, um, taking that time to be intentional and aware in that moment that that was something that was valuable to you. I mean, you were sleeping with it on,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So that recognition of something that was important to you in that moment, that's another one of those acts of compassion
Oh,
too, right?
absolutely.
Did you have other instances, whether it was in the ER or while you were hospitalized, where um, everyone just, or I, not everyone, but even a single person just treated you with that personalized level of humanity?
Absolutely. I think I I look at humanity differently because of my experience. Andy, for one, came every day to see me. Um, Before he'd start a shift, he would come check on me, and I don't even remember the first couple times because I was in ICU and sedated. But then I remember when he walked into my room when they finally had me in a regular room, and just that I just lit up when he walked in the room, because he was. I knew exactly who he was, and I told him, "You're my angel." I've told everyone, "You're my angel," um, and gosh, my mom actually told me she went into the cafeteria to get lunch one day, and was telling someone who worked there, and they said, "Oh, we heard about that. How are you doing?" And like took time to help her get what she needed, and that's pretty incredible. And the everyone who came into my room, I remember a nurse was in there with us, and shared a story of her own experience with domestic violence. And for me at that point, I was still like, is that really what happened to me? It was so hard for me to grasp, like, I was a victim of domestic violence. Um, but her sharing her story with me, and, you know, just helped me kind of realize where I was. I remember um, a PA coming in and saying, "I'm going to get you home for Christmas. I'm going to do everything I can to get you home for Christmas." And it didn't happen, but they were so determined. That was so important. And um, outside of the hospital, the people I work with are so incredible. Um, by 10 o'clock in the morning, the day it happened, my boss had a complete schedule for the entire week for my son of who was going to take him, where he was going to be. They took him to the interviews that he had to do. They included him in their Christmas plans. I mean, this kid got like 6 Christmas celebrations. and one of the families, her in-laws, they didn't know who I was. They didn't know who he was. But when they heard what happened, they went out and bought a whole bunch of Christmas presents for him so that he would have the same experience. Santa came to the house he was staying at and knew he was there. And, those little things that just made such a difference in his life. But also, I was just thinking about this the other day, like, when you're a parent, you have such a huge responsibility to your child, and especially at that age at 6, and they are so dependent on you, and it's your responsibility to take care of them. And I couldn't. I was not in any place to take care of him, and the fact that all of those folks stepped in and did my job for me was amazing, because for him it was seamless. He knew I had gotten hurt. He knew that Dad was the one who hurt me, and he knew I was in the hospital. Anytime he asked to see me, they brought him to see me. It was just, but for him, he could also kind of go on like normal. He got to play with new friends. He got to play with new toys. He got to just be a kid. And when he was in the hospital, there was the child life coordinator there. She went to the bookstore. We actually have a Barnes and Noble still, Eugene. Those don't exist very often. But she went over there and bought him Spider-Man books because she knew he liked Spider-Man, and gave him, just like bags and bags of coloring books and toys and books and all kinds of stuff. And I think for me, I obviously the compassion I received was incredible, but for all of those folks to just take on that love for my kid so that I could focus on getting better. I think it's why I got out of the hospital so quickly. And I think it's why I've been able to heal, because I've had so much support and so much love from my entire family.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you there more. When I'm comparing our traumas, I sit there thinking, well, I was the kid,
Yeah.
And you're the parent here. But I also have to think, well, I guess I still feel like these days the things that just emotionally still bring me to my knees is the compassion and the kindness shown to my family members.
Yeah.
Me, I've kind of dealt with my, my stuff
Right.
at 30 years later, but the thing that I feel like that's a debt that I can never repay. The only chance I have to repay that is to live well.
Exactly.
Is to live well.
Yeah.
And
So true.
you're doing that. You're doing that too. You are living well.
I'm trying.
That's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share
I
about this?
wanted to share a story about Andy, my nurse, because once you leave the hospital, how are you going to find these people again? And all I knew was that his name was Andy. And so one of my son's friends, his dad was an ER doctor at the hospital. And so I reached out to him to see if he knew any way I could contact him. He gave me a supervisor name, and I emailed her, didn't hear back. And so I was so determined. And it had been almost a year, and I was still trying to think of ways that, I might be able to find him. And so I went on LinkedIn and I just searched Andy, trauma nurse, Eugene, Oregon, and found him. And I sent him a brief message and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but this is who I am. And he responded and he said, yeah, I remember holding your hand. And that told me that moment meant as much to him as it did to me, and impacted him in the same way. And from there, we exchanged phone numbers and we text all the time. And he's currently in a nurse practitioner program. And whenever he finishes a class and gets his grades, he sends them to me. He's straight A's. He's a brilliant man.
Yeah.
But it's just so great to be connected to him and to know that he's going to keep doing that for other people. I'm just one of, probably thousands of patients. But he still remembers me, and it still impacted him. And I think he probably feels that way about all his patients, and he cares. And for me, he's just the epitome of what a healthcare provider should be. And I've just been so lucky. I didn't even have a primary provider when I got hurt. And our medical system here is really impacted, and it's hard to find doctors. And I looked out and found a nurse practitioner who was taking new patients, and she has been my advocate through the whole thing too. She had previous experience as a trauma nurse, so she understood my story. But she came in, about 3 weeks later. But she's been there too. And when I was having trouble getting a surgery I needed, she called and advocated for me. And she's determined. She just is like, we'll try whatever medications we need to try until it works, and we're gonna make sure that you're comfortable and happy. And I feel like that's just the definition of the care I've gotten. And so I'm a huge. I recommend our hospital all the time to folks in town, and I'm always saying, like, I've been so blessed and so lucky to have such great care.
Boy, we are all blessed and lucky.
Yeah.
We are all blessed and lucky, but you are especially blessed and lucky. And so thank you so much for sharing so much of this extremely difficult story. And I'm just sure that those who are in healthcare are inspired by the Andys of the world, and the Shanes of the world. This is why we do what we do. And so to finish up today, I usually have a couple of kind of rapid fire questions that are nothing related to what we've just talked about. Is it okay to shoot those past you?
Sure.
All right. So question number 1. Let's say you are stranded on that proverbial desert island.
Okay.
But you've got housing, you've got food, you've got clothing, you've got all your essentials. But you can only keep one piece of art with you. And whether that piece of art is a book, a film, an album, a painting, sculpture, what piece of art, or I guess another way to ask that is, what is a piece of art that really speaks to you?
Oh my goodness. That's a good one. I think I probably would want a blank book so that I could write. I've started writing my story, and I think to be able to write, doodle, draw, whatever. Secondly, I have this piece of art that AJ made me when he was about 4 years old, and it's a heart, and it says, "I love you, Mom." And I think that it's hanging in my office right now, but I think that's the other one that I'd want to have with me if I could have two.
That's a good one too. Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So, second question for you then is: let's say you opened up your purse or your wallet or your PayPal account, and you found that a $100 had magically appeared in there. But since it's a magic $100, it has to be spent before the end of the day, and you can only spend it on yourself. What do you spend that $100 on?
Oh, so many things. I probably would buy myself a new pair of shoes. I like shoes.
And they'd have to be like, Uggs or something like that, since you're in the Pacific Northwest.
Nikes, everything.
Nikes, yeah, there you go. There you go. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes even more sense. New pair of shoes, always a good choice. And then last question for you is, if you had the biggest billboard on the tallest mountain in the world, what is the message that you broadcast to humanity?
I think this is, give yourself grace. I think grace, not only give yourself, give others grace. I think grace is so important. And just allow yourself to make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up about it. It's okay. Life is hard, and getting through it, having that positive attitude, and just allow the bad stuff to happen, but don't dwell on it. Don't hang on to it. That's a lot, but ultimately it's just about grace and being graceful.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. Caitlin, I cannot thank you enough for sharing with me today, with us. Yeah. And I just know that there are so many people that are impacted by your experiences. And as always, we're trying to take something bad and turn it into something good, right?
Right. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, every time I share my story, it helps me heal a little bit. And so I really appreciate the chance to do that.
If this helps you in any way, then, all the more. It's a win-win-win situation then.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel. Of course, this is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Thank you again to everyone who is subscribing, sharing, rating, reviewing, doing all of those social media interaction and engagement things. We appreciate you all. Thank you all so much.